a production of WGBH, Boston.
He's a serious musician and composer, a celebrated writer, and a respected art collector. But he's best known for his sense of humor, the legendary Cheech Marin. I'm Maria Hinojosa. This is One on One. Cheech Marin, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I've known about you since I was a little girl.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, exacto. Do you feel, though, like your whole life has kind of been this, like, crossover, you know, kind of like from the Chicano, Latino to becoming a mainstream actor, from, you know, a doper to becoming somebody serious, from a comic to becoming an actor? Do you feel like that? Your whole life has been kind of...
You know, I've always felt that I've always been mainstream. Always. We used to have a saying that when we were in the heyday of Cheech and Chong, that we were middle-of-the-road dopers. And that was the norm. And everybody used to laugh. But it proved to be true. I mean, because our generation, the baby boom generation, was the mainstream. So whatever things that we were going through, the mainstream was going to go through.
Interesting, because I think that people kind of see you as this kind of counterculture representation.
Well, we are, but the counterculture was the main culture. It depends on whose ox you're goring here. We always felt that we were the mainstream culture, and we said we were middle of that, and so we always felt normal.
Because kind of counterculture dissent is part of American culture?
Absolutely, yeah, and it became the culture. Now there's being dissent against the counterculture, you know, as the generations come up. But what's been amazing to me is we're recently on tour now, our first time in over 30 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be able to do it. Yeah. Is that 80% of the audience that comes to see us now is between 30 and 40.
Right.
That means that most of them people weren't alive the last time we were on stage. And so to have them come, that means that we're right dead center of the culture, you know, that's pop culture. That's the definition of pop culture right now.
When I was preparing for this interview, one of the things that I found fascinating was that you actually, the way you and Tommy Chong started was not in the United States, it was in Canada.
In Canada.
And you were actually, you were leaving this country, you were a draft dodger.
Yeah, I became a draft dodger. I mean, it was inevitable. I was in college my senior year at Cal State Northridge, and I became a member of the draft resistance movement, headed by David Harris. And the idea was to become the universal soldier and turn in your draft card and not participate in the system as a means of protest. We didn't recognize their authority over us. And so I did that.
So you were politically radical.
Right away.
Before you were even comedically radical, comically radical.
I mean, I think that part informed my comedy more than vice versa. So I had turned in my draft card in a national draft turn-in day, and I was very transformative that semester, and I discovered my inner artist. I always knew I was an artist, but I didn't know what medium. I couldn't paint, I couldn't draw, but I knew it had some kind of artistic leaning in me, and I took a pottery class.
Pottery?
Pottery. And my Mexican genes came out, and there I was making pottery, and it completely changed my life, and I quit all my other classes, and I just made pottery all day, all night.
And your dad, who was with the LAPD, which I think, again, a lot of people are going to be, Cheech Marin's dad was with the LAPD. Yeah. What were they thinking about, you know, this Chicano son who's in college, drops out to become a pottery maker, then moves to Canada?
Yeah. My dad, he was a veteran of the World War II. He was in the Navy, and he was a policeman. All my uncles were policemen. The whole family, we were a police family.
I am sure people are going to hear that, and their jaws are going to drop.
Well, my Uncle Rudy was the highest-ranking Chicano in the LAPD. He was captain of Hollenbeck, and he became he was on the parole board. He was the assistant to the city attorney, but anyways, we were very mainstream family in that regard, and he was against the war. He didn't believe what they were doing on but his ideology told him, well, if they called me, I'd go. But well, I'm different from you. I don't believe in this. And I don't. But what coincided was that my pottery teacher knew of a student that was going to start, a former student that was starting a pottery and up in Canada. He said maybe you could go be an assistant with him. Because what happened is I turned in my draft card, and then the powers came down on me, and Hershey, who was a director of the draft at the time, issued a directive that anybody who did anything like that, we protested at the draft boards all the time and did stunts.
But you know what's interesting is that you actually could have gone to Mexico, right?
I probably could have.
But actually, you go north.
Yeah, but pottery was up there, you know. And the question was because right then they started sending the very first draft resistors to Leavenworth for 8 years, and I go, wait a minute, I didn't do anything wrong. I did something right. So I went to Canada and became this guy's assistant. And then when I was there, I got a notice for draft and never came back. Well, I came back eventually, but I was drafted illegally. Because of Hershey issued this directive that anybody who did it would have their classification changed and be classified 1A and sent to Vietnam.
But let me ask you this. So when this was happening, and you go to Canada, you meet up with Tommy Chong, whose parents ran this burlesque place up in Canada, and you guys were doing topless.
Improv.
Well, you guys weren't topless, right?
Sometimes.
So at that moment, did you imagine, well, this is going to be my life, I'm going to become a comic? Or were you entirely confused about what the future held?
You know, at that age, you're just happy to have a job. It paid $5 more a week to hang out with topless girls, do improv comedy, smoke hash, than delivering carpets, which was what I was doing before that. So, oh, hey, this is a good gig.
That you create at that point, when you create Cheech and Chong, do you feel like you had to go back and kind of find your inner cholo? You know, go back to LA because you were the Latino, right? In the
but not
Cheech
in
and Chong.
Canada. Not in Canada. They didn't know nothing about Latinos, Chicanos, Cholos, nada. They thought I was Indian. Because always the question when I was in Canada was, "What are you?" You know, they couldn't figure it out. They knew I wasn't East Indian. They knew I wasn't could have been American Indian, and they always everybody. Well, what are you?
Were you thinking at that time? Did you call yourself at that time a Mexican American, a Chicano, a Latino?
No, I was a Chicano then. That time. I've always been a Chicano. My parents always called themselves Chicanos when I was being raised in LA. It was the only term I really identified with because Mexican. You always get called Mexican. Well, I've never even been to Mexico. I don't speak Spanish that well. And when I heard Chicano, that described me. So I was Chicano from then
So
on.
for people who might not know what Chicano, the term Chicano is, what is the definition of Chicano?
Well, like Chicanos, everybody has a different definition because Chicanos is a tribe of all chiefs, no Indians. And I've heard a zillion different descriptions of what Chicano is. For me, Chicano, it was first a derisive term by Mexicans to other Mexicans living in the United States. The concept being that the Mexicanos living in the United States were no longer truly Mexicanos; they were something smaller.
They had turned their back on Mexico.
They were Chicos, they were Chicanos, little satellite Mexicans.
Oh.
And so they were Chicanos. You know, they were not Mexicanos, they were Chicanos, little, you know, Mexican-ish.
Mexican-ish.
You know.
Mexican light.
Yeah, Mexican light.
But
they were living here, and they would call them Pochos is a more derogatory term as far as I'm concerned. But Chicanos, but that's really described me. And so that was the term. And depending upon where you lived in relation to the border was more or less an insult. Farther away from the border didn't matter.
So you come back from Canada. You have established yourself at that point as Cheech and Chong. You make that incredible album, Big Bamboo, that was being played in the back of my house, so my mom and dad couldn't hear about it.
You're like others.
When, though, do you realize, I mean, you had a great run, Cheech and Chong. Huge, you like broke records, selling albums. At what point then do you realize, okay, I want to break away from the Cheech that everybody knows, the stoner guy? I mean, was there a conscious decision in your mind in order to break into Hollywood?
No, not really. The decision was the relationship between Tommy Chong and myself. That wasn't working. That had become contentious. And it wasn't that I wanted to break away from being Cheech the Chicano stoner. I was perfectly happy with doing
Really?
that. What I wanted to do was to shift our focus just from sex and drugs and rock and roll to other stuff, but using Cheech and Chong. But it was a power struggle within the group.
That's so interesting because I would have thought that you made this decision that you wanted to kind of break into acting and directing. You would have been happy to stay Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a struggle between Tommy and I, not between intention. He characterized it as that because
Right.
For his.
But you have always been, because at one point, and we'll talk a little bit later about your work as being an art collector, and it seems like you said that sometimes you have to fight against being Cheech, being seen as Cheech the stoner.
Yeah, I don't struggle against that hard. I just present myself. I did.
And did the doors open in Hollywood? I mean, I have to be honest with you. When I first saw you, I guess, mainstream television, Nash was the name of the show, right?
Yeah, Nash Bridges. Yeah.
Nash Bridges. It was a little bit hard for me. I was like, I can't see Cheech as a police officer.
That was truer to who I was than anything else. My dad was a cop all my life. I grew up knowing I lived a cop's life. I was a cop's kid. And so being Joe Dominguez and Nash Bridges was so second nature to me. That was the easiest role I ever had, really.
And in Hollywood, where it's hard, I mean, you know that, how difficult was it to be taken seriously then, to take the Cheech stoner hat off?
Oh, that was very hard because it was like turning around a super tanker. It doesn't stop and go 180 degrees.
How did you do it? How did you? I mean, did people not even take your calls sometimes?
Yeah, it's just how do Hollywood is all perception. It really is all perception, and it's how to change the perception of you from being that guy. You do it one step at a time. Everybody was thinks, well, you work all the time. I'm Chicano. I have to have 3 jobs.
We never say no to work.
Exactly. No. Okay, I'll be there. And it was just one job after another, and I didn't recognize that I had changed. I just did it. I said this will eventually evolve into something. So I just kept working, and I had to work. And so the thing that really broke it down was working for Disney in animation. I was offered a job being in Oliver and Company. Still a Chicano character, but in a Disney movie. It was very significant that Disney would hire Cheech of Cheech and Chong.
At what point did you decide, okay, I've done acting, I do it well, and that you wanted to direct? And you directed that amazing movie, Born in East LA,
thank you.
which, now when you think about that movie, Born in East LA, it was funny when it came out. It is considered, one of the pillars of Chicano Latino film in the United States of America.
It was something I was raised to do because Cheech and Chong, we wrote and directed all those movies together. So I didn't get credit officially for directing, but Tommy and I directed those together. So it wasn't something I'd never did before. That's how you did it. Why hire a contractor? I'm a contractor. Here, window goes here. It's this big. It's just like that. And so when it came time to do Born in East LA, I had this idea and I wrote it, and I tried to get other people to direct it. I tried. Robert Altman was going to direct the movie, and the studio wouldn't okay him, because he was too radical at that time, and they did. So
you were seen as less radical than Robert Altman?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Wow. So I said, well, you direct it. Oh, God. Okay, all right, I did. It's a lot of work, and it was a lot of work, but I after a while, maybe I should be doing this. It's
1987. The film, for those who haven't seen it, and I'm sure people are going to run out and go get it now, the film is about someone like you who was born in East LA, but ends up getting deported and has no way to prove that they're an American citizen.
He gets caught in an immigration. It's based on a true story. I was
going to say, it's so prescient.
Yeah.
It's happening
all
today.
the time now. It happens. I've read about it many times after that. It was this particular story. I was sitting there reading the paper in my kitchen. I was looking for something to do, some inspiration, And I was reading the story about this kid he was 13 or 14, and he was a little bit retarded, so he couldn't, find his way that well. And he was born in East LA, but he was Mexican, and it was in a place where they raided, and he got sent back to Mexico. And I was at the same time I was reading this, the radio was on, and Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen was playing, and so I started singing Born in East LA, and I just, that's it, that's the story. And I sat down and wrote it right then, and then.
What does it do to you, Cheech, when you see the fact that what you were dealing with in 1987, a kind of target against Chicanos, Mexicanos, and you're now, 2009, and we're seeing the same thing happening. What does it do to you?
I don't. It doesn't defeat me, and it doesn't deter me, because I see this bigger picture for me. Right now, we're in the middle of the biggest wave of immigration ever in the history of the country, chiefly from Mexico. 3/4 of the Latino pie in this country is from Mexico. So we're the 800-pound ape in the room. But what is amazing is what differentiates this particular way from others is that it's in every state, every single state that I go to.
I know, and as I was writing my notes, I was like, So we have Chicanos, but that means that now we're actually going to have Chicanos from Tennessee.
Exactly.
Chicanos from New York City.
Exactly.
Chicanos from Chicago.
Yeah, it is going to totally transform the United States culturally, financially, ideologically, and there's no way to stop it. There is no way to stop it. There are 11 just illegal immigrants. Probably the same number of legal immigrants spread out in every single state. There's no way to stop that. It's like a lava flow. There's a way to direct it, but there's no way to stop it.
So do you feel like, when you were battling to kind of be taken seriously as a Chicano, as a Latino, do you feel like now you can stand back and say, wow, you were one of those people who were pigeonholed?
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, you've been able to overcome all of that. And you're just seen now as a mainstream
I've
actor.
always thought I was mainstream. I think I'm mainstream now. I think that Latinos are mainstream, and they're just, it's not the fact that they are, it's the recognition of the fact they are. All goes against perception once again.
You also have, again, broken a perception of Cheech Marin.
Yeah.
Because you have become a very serious art collector.
Yeah.
An amazing, and that was one of the first things that I heard that you were doing, and I was like, wow, I really need to look again at Cheech Marin. You have a very specific collection of Chicano art from a very specific period of time. What happened there? What was it that you suddenly said, wow, I need to start buying this artwork?
I was always an appreciator of art from a very young age. I was very fortunate in my little group of cousins. I had 3 other cousins who were...
You only had 3?
Well, the inner core. The inner core of 50 cousins.
My son is like, I got 150.
I had a big family too, but the cousins that I hung out with, Louis, Lali, and Regine, we were Chicano anomalies. We came from working class families, but they were very intellectual, and they were very scholastic. We all got scholarships to every school we ever went to, and we always used to challenge each other. It was like we were these academic strivers, and we were on each other, and it was always, and they all went to succeed. Now, my cousin Louis, who was the leader of the group, he was just this genius who got a scholarship to every school he ever went to, and we were always. Were pitted against each other, and from an early age, my little niche was art. I thought, well, because I wanted to be an artist, but I couldn't draw and I couldn't paint. I could make a stick figure maybe, but I couldn't do that. And I didn't know it was something you could learn to do. It's just you had it or not. It's like you were fast or you were slow.
So your role in the competition was, I'm going to start buying art.
No, I'm going to learn about art. So that's what I did from a very early age, like around 12. I would go to the library every week and take up all the art books. Oh, that's Cézanne, okay, that's Miro, okay, that's Rembrandt.
What I love about this is that hopefully people will watch this and, because you do so often break these stereotypes.
Yeah.
And I do hope that people just think, when they we are so much more than the stereotype that we are created,
yeah.
whatever it is. What does Chicano art represent for you? I mean, you talk about it as it being an American school of art, a style, a very specific style. What is that style?
It's a style that's not defined by painting, stylistic painting concerns. What makes it a school of Chicano art is the experience of being Chicano, told from a myriad of different viewpoints, whether it's social, political, religious, gender-based, philosophical, abstract. And you put all these points of view together and you get the 360 of the feeling of being Chicano in this country, the sabor. You know, it's like that taste of, it's not specific, okay, follow this and that's what it is. It's just the feeling of, oh, this is the feeling of being in the neighborhood and what it means and how we look at things and how what our perception, perspective is of, because Chicano art is traditional Mexican art, folkloric background, melded with, or not even melded, clashed with American pop. And what it does is it stands in for the universal immigrant experience.
That you've actually curated a show.
Yeah, yeah.
You wrote a book about Chicano art, which is an amazing book. When you first saw your artwork hanging up in the San Antonio Museum of Art, and you had hundreds of people coming in to see Chicano art hanging on museum walls.
It was a moment, yeah.
Are you getting teary-eyed about that? Wow, because what does it mean?
It was a long struggle, you know, because it was that thing where you're fighting against the perception. And I kept insisting that there was a Chicano school of art, and everybody poo-pooed me. Oh, we don't use a school of art anymore. It's very old school, the old school. It's very this, for that. And then I said, well, you know what? I know that it's there. I know that these people are making this art for a purpose, and I know that it says something. And I says, one day I'm going to put all these paintings up in a room, and you're going to see it.
You've had to fight constantly against this stuff. You ended up getting a lot of major funders.
Yeah, Target stores and Hewlett-Packard provided the seed money for the production of the show. It was a huge major show. We went on for 7 years, coast to coast, and we played all major mainstream museums. We were at the Smithsonian for 6 months, the Weissman in Minneapolis, the Young in San Francisco. We just finished the show in LACMA, LA County, and it was, some places it was a struggle, and some places they welcomed us with open arms. And also it was always the opposite of what you thought it would be.
You particularly want people in this country to see that art.
Yeah. My theory was that you couldn't love or hate Chicano art unless you saw it. And the whole thing was to overcome exclusion. We were being excluded from having shelf space, basically. You know, I've come from show business. You only, if they see you, you exist. If you don't see you, you don't exist.
What about right now? How do you, Chicano Latino artists, in a good space moving forward?
Yeah, they're being recognized. Now the discussion is not, is there a school of Chicano art or not, is where does it belong in the firmament? Is where does it place? How does it affect other art forms? How does it affect other artists? So we've moved entirely, and the doors have opened. Now we're here, and we're affecting the rest of the art world. But it's a constant struggle. I mean, it doesn't. And
the doors have not necessarily all flung open.
Yeah, but at least we're there.
Let's talk about you did reunite with Tommy Chong.
Yeah.
You know, time does heal.
Yeah. Time wounds all heals.
Yeah, right. Time heals all wounds. What's it like to be out there? You are actually playing sold-out shows. Yeah. How long do you think this is going to go on? I mean, would you be prepared to do it for a year?
I think it can go on a lot further than that. I mean, I think we can do it until we don't want to do it anymore. I mean, that's...
Now, you're 62?
62.
And Tommy's 70.
70, yeah.
And you're
so
still...
maybe a couple of years. Maybe a year. Yeah.
What's it like to be doing live stuff out there?
It's really great. I mean, it's what we do best. Of all the things that Cheech and Chong did, records, movies, live is what we do best, is what we're best at.
And the writing is still coming?
It's just, we were involved in this evolutionary comedy that evolved every night. and it evolves so slowly, but so presently that we're not aware of the evolution until you get further on up the line, because people have seen our show when we started the tour. They go, "Oh, your show's changed a lot in the thing." Oh, we're not aware of it because it changes every night.
Wow, amazing.
And I'm flabbergasted.
And when you see those young people, and you actually have a very funny statement, you say from womb to tomb.
To moon to tomb.
So you are guaranteed to have fans from the youngest age to now. Cheech, Marin, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Hope you can continue for many more years.
I will.
I hope so. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Marin. Gracias.
Continue the conversation at wgbh.org/one-on-one.